Race is simply a set of activities that one can choose or not choose. What do I mean by this? So there are many people in America who have very, very profoundly wrong ideas about race. They think that race is this just grand concept that encompasses all of us and goes beyond us and has to be hard to talk about and has to be difficult to manage, but these ideas are wrong. Now, the camps of Americans and people in general who do believe these grand ideas of race, I think, are broken down into three groups. You have the critical race theorists, you have the anti-racist and anti-racist advocates, and you have the average American. The critical race theorist is going to tell you that race is not simply a skin complexion, but it is the result of a historical process which has marginalized and oppressed people who are not white. The anti-racist will go a step further and say, yeah, that's true, but racism also involves policy. So there can be policies or legislation passed by certain people in certain areas that are racist simply by the fact of them having an impact on the idea of inequity, them making sure or them maybe incidentally causing inequity to happen. So a law does not have to be racist for the anti-racist or explicitly racist or with racial intent for it to be racist. The law simply has to have an impact on furthering inequity. And for many average Americans, race is simply an immutable characteristic by which nothing can be reasonably or credibly deduced. Nothing can be assumed about that. So of these three camps in this example here, I think the third one is probably more closer to the truth. Indeed. But calling race an immutable characteristic still gives it an undeserved importance that escapes what it actually means in reality. Race, my friends, is simply a choice. And it is simply, in the process of being a choice, simply a part of a broad array of other physical attributes and characteristics. For example, height is typically used as a metric for certain people who want to go into certain things. For example, most basketball players are pretty dang tall. I am 5'8". I probably would not be a basketball player. However, someone's height does not have to have a substantive impact on their ability to succeed in life. Someone's height does not bind them to a particular material circumstance and does not bind them to a particular fate simply because height has a social status to it. Likewise, race has a social status to it, but my race need not bind me to a particular idea or particular fate simply because I have a particular skin complexion. It completely boggles the mind. We choose to give a race significance. It does not choose us. And when we choose to give a race significance, we get ourselves caught in the trap of thinking that race is bigger than us, but we indeed are bigger than it. I remember, when I was in grade school, I would get called oftentimes a very perverse word. I would get called an Oreo because I did not act in a certain way that my peers, my other African American peers, thought black folks ought to act. I didn't speak a certain way. I didn't listen to a certain kind of music. I didn't wear my clothing a certain kind of way. And for them, that signified that I wasn't black. Now, that's a different topic all in and of itself. But that mentality there suggests that there's something a little bit more than race, even if that mentality is absolutely incorrect, and I think that it profoundly is. There's something more to race than simply you being a certain color. There's something more. There's an activity to it. So instead of taking the idea of race being an activity and filling it with descriptions that are not true, let's actually understand that race itself is inherently unintelligible. It is not. It doesn't have a description to it. When you act as if race has a certain a set of fates for someone, you give it a description. We give race its significance. There is nothing inherently black or white about speaking proper. There is nothing inherently black or white about wearing your clothing a certain way. There is nothing inherently tied to its skin color other than what we give it in our own social contexts. And this is proven true, I think, by many of the counterpoints against Jim Crow. Let me take you back to Montgomery, Alabama. During the Montgomery bus boycotts, when Rosa Parks was unjustly denied a seat on that bus, there were many Americans, white and black Americans alike, who didn't necessarily consign themselves to a particular race, but instead endorsed a set of activities that helped beat the segregated public bus system in Montgomery. There were taxi companies who would offer rides to black folks, and they competed with the energies of the free market, and they overcame. If they saw, again, race as this sort of absolute truth that we cannot escape, then they would have bought into the Jim Crow idea of what race was. And for the Jim Crow mentality, race was a mark of superiority for whites and inferiority for everyone else. But the fact that you have black and whites working together in a context in which that mentality is dominant, and then usurping that mentality and putting forth a different idea, shows you that race need not be your destiny. When we realize, my friends, that race is simply a social club fitted to particular preferences and not actually based in biological fact or reality, we can be free. For the black man in Jim Crow South who fought, who picketed, who did sit-ins, who did every single thing, who used energy to push back against the tide of evil that was Jim Crow, for him, he did not let his race be an anvil to his leg. For him, he transcended his race. The custodians of Jim Crow tried to implant a destiny into his being that he had nothing to do with, and he rejected it. MLK rejected it. Every single great leader rejected it. And when we reject it, my friends, in an era in which we are far, far, far removed from a lot of the sins of the past, then I think that we can become free just like many others have become free throughout history. We can become free to see ourselves as individuals, colorfully united in this tapestry of brilliance that is our lives, rather than people who fit preordained categories. Think on it. My friends, please stay colorfully united. I love you. Bye-bye.